Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a very sad day for our parliamentary family. We've lost a great colleague in Jim Carr, and of course many of us, particularly those of us from Manitoba, have lost a great friend, a great colleague, a great Canadian, a great defender of prairie interests. I've known Jim Carr for 35 years. When he was an MLA in Manitoba, he served in the Manitoba Legislature from 1988 to 1995. Always a brilliant orator, a brilliant communicator, and just a wonderful human being. So my condolences to his family, his friends, and all Manitobans and Canadians who grieve for him. I was so happy for him, and frankly happy for the country and for the prairies when his Building a Green Prairie Economy bill passed third reading this last week. I know he put everything he had into that, despite being very ill. It really was a testament to his courage and his passion for the prairies. I was by his side when he made his final speech, and we are going to miss, again, a great orator, a great communicator, a passionate Canadian, a passionate defender of the prairies who served this House and served this country so well. As our Minister of Natural Resources, our Minister for the Prairies, Chair of the Public Safety Committee, and you know, it's just an awful feeling today to lose such a wonderful colleague who was respected so much on all sides of the aisle. And I think you've seen today that he's really brought the House together. Lots of hugs. There are no divides in this House today as we honor the memory of the Honourable Jim Carr.
You talked about how important he was as a voice for the prairies, obviously in addition to the great personal loss. Are you concerned about that voice not being heard in the chamber and in the government anymore?
Well, we have other colleagues from the prairies that will again be inspired by Jim's spirit and by Jim's courage. And we will take up the cause of his bill, which will live on. And so we have three remaining colleagues from Manitoba, two from Alberta, and we will be putting our shoulder to the wheel, one to honor his memory, but also to do the work that he did for so many years in defending prairie interests.
Would you really encourage the Senate then to
I absolutely would encourage the Senate to move quickly to pass that bill, to send it back to this House for royal assent. And I know Jim will be watching, and he will be very, very proud that he was able to leave us this very important legacy. Thanks very much.
Well, obviously, I'm here to talk about Jim Carr's passing. The first time I met Jim was in 2015. It was our first cabinet swearing in. We bumped into each other. We were actually sitting side by side on the bus heading to Rideau Hall. And it clicked. We got along very well. His son would later work for me as my Director of Parliamentary Affairs, Ben. And you know, politics runs in the family. Jim was a bridge builder. He was a man that believed in the positive change that politics can bring. He was always very proud of Winnipeg. He was a, a hobo player, had played in the Winnipeg Symphonic Orchestra. He was also not only a patron for the arts, but a strong supporter of the business community in Winnipeg. And, you know, I think Canadians will remember him as being a strong voice for the prairies and a strong voice for positive change. And so to his family and loved ones, thank you for sharing Dad and sharing your friend with us here in Ottawa and with the country. And I think Canada is a better place because Jim Carr worked every day to make it a better place. Thank you.
It's obviously extremely sad for all of us that worked and liked and admired Jim Carr. I met him well before he was a member of Parliament, when he led the Business Council in Manitoba, and New Brunswick was very inspired by the work he'd done on immigration issues in Manitoba well before he was elected and joined our caucus and our cabinet. I'm particularly saddened because he got sick right after the last election. I too was in hospital recovering from a different kind of blood cancer, and Jim and I have spoken a lot in the last weeks and months about the kind of treatments he was going through, not dissimilar to the ones that I went through. So we had that sad bond of both having had a form of blood cancer, and that's why it makes it, I think, very difficult for so many of us.
What does his loss mean to this place?
He always, as a minister and as a member of Parliament, fought for decency and sort of cross-partisanship, working with opposition members. He was a proud Liberal, but he was also somebody who thought that Parliament and the government should find a way to serve all Canadians. And I was always inspired by his real effort to work with other political parties and other Canadians who may not be partisan supporters of ours. So that's something that we can think about in the coming months.
And you alluded to just that sad bond that the two of you share. That makes this very difficult, I would imagine. I mean, your fate could have been his fate. His could have been yours.
So I remember I was still in the hospital recovering from my own stem cell transplant when I saw the news that the day after the election, a year ago, he too was admitted to hospital with a different form of blood cancer. And he and I talked about stem cell transplants and talked about your hair falling out and your hair growing back and your appetite changing and disappearing, and then it all comes back. So he and I, over the last year, spoke of our shared experiences going through these similar but different medical treatments. So obviously, for me, it's quite painful to think that somebody who was in a similar struggle to mine passed away today.
Est-ce qu'on peut vous demander en français aussi une réaction, qu'est-ce que son départ signifie pour le pays, pour le Manitoba?
Évidemment, c'est un moment triste pour ses amis, ses collègues, dont moi, certainement. Moi, j'ai rencontré Jim Carr la première fois bien avant qu'il soit député. Il était président du Conseil des affaires du Manitoba, et le Nouveau-Brunswick s'inspirait beaucoup de ce que lui avait fait au Manitoba en termes d'attirer des immigrants, des nouveaux Canadiens. Alors moi, je l'ai rencontré bien avant qu'il soit député et collègue au Conseil des ministres. Mais Jim et moi, on a partagé un lien par le fait que tous les deux, on était atteints des cancers du sang. Et dans mon cas, j'étais encore à l'hôpital à Maisonneuve-Rosemont à Montréal après les élections de l'année passée, quand j'ai appris que M. Carr avait été hospitalisé pour un cancer du sang. Jim m'avait appelé pour savoir comment les greffes de cellules souches se faisaient, puis comment j'ai trouvé les chimiothérapies, puis le passage à travers la greffe de cellules souches. Alors, on a maintient cette conversation au fil des derniers mois. Lui avait eu des difficultés avec ses reins, Les reins se sont pas arrangés suite au diagnostic que lui a eu. Mais on avait parlé un peu des cours de chimio, le fait que nos cheveux allaient tomber, que les cheveux vont revenir, que l'appétit allait disparaître ou changer. Et comme vous voyez, dans mon cas, l'appétit est revenu. Alors moi, j'ai essayé d'encourager Jim parce que moi aussi, j'ai passé des circonstances un peu similaires.
Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? Qu'est-ce que son départ signifie pour le Manitoba et pour le pays?
Bien, écoutez, on n'a pas énormément de voix à l'intérieur de notre gouvernement des prairies. On a besoin d'entendre ces voix-là. Et Jim Carr a toujours été, pour les gens des provinces de l'Ouest et surtout des prairies, une voix forte. Il nous a souvent parlé de quelqu'un qui venait des prairies. Et comme j'ai dit, c'est des voix à l'intérieur de notre gouvernement que nous avons besoin d'entendre. Alors, le fait que sa voix s'est éteinte le rend, je pense, plus important pour nous comme gouvernement d'écouter les voix du Manitoba, les Manitobans et les gens qui habitent sur les prairies. Merci.
Just in English, what you said about him being the voice for the prairies in government.
So Jim Carr was a very, very proud Manitoban and a very, very proud child of the prairies. He often spoke in our caucus and in our cabinet about the importance of prairie voices, about the importance of understanding what our policies mean on the prairie, was the phrase he used to use, that I remember fondly. Our government doesn't have many voices on the prairies inside our caucus. We need to hear those voices. We need to be sensitive to those voices and understand those voices. So in the sense that his voice was a loud and important one for many of us, we'll have to double our own efforts to understand and listen to our colleagues from that part of the country and hear other voices as well. Merci.
Today's a great loss for Canada, for Manitoba, for the Prairie West, for Jim's family. He's a mentor, and I said to my team, he's like my parliamentary dad. Ben and I were colleagues in Heritage, and it's fitting to pause and to remember the life of a businessman, a great Canadian patriot, an oboist, a humanitarian, and that deep, gravelly voice that was on radio with Peter Zofsky when I was a kid. And I got to serve in Parliament with a great Canadian, a great friend and a great mentor. Et nous allons se souvenir longtemps du travail de Jim Carr. Thankfully, he got his motion passed. And I think we can all hear the voice that he might have shared with us this Thursday in the House. And my deep condolences to the Carr family and to everybody who's been touched by the love and respect of the Honourable Jim Carr. Merci tout le monde.
Horrible, horrible news we received recently, a few minutes ago. I saw Jim last week in the House. He was so proud of pushing his PMB over the line and was excellent on the floor. I was so proud of him that he was able to get that done. We're going to miss him so much. It's a sad day for Canada. My condolences to his family, to all his friends. Thank you.
Premièrement, à sa famille, évidemment. C'est vraiment triste. On l'aimait beaucoup. Il travaillait tellement fort. Je pense que il a donné son dernier respire à son projet de loi, évidemment. Puis ça démontre comment il était tellement convaincu et convaincant dans le travail qu'il faisait.
Qui changeait au sein du gouvernement du cabinet? Qu'est-ce que son expérience apportait?
Jim avait vraiment une occasion de, premièrement, montrer comment l'Ouest canadien avait beaucoup à offrir à tout le pays. Je pense que c'est là où j'ai beaucoup appris de comment il faut s'assurer que la réalité canadienne, elle est régionale. Il y a beaucoup de choses. Puis Jim a toujours fait valoriser cet aspect-là. Puis je pense juste l'entendre parler du Cono-là, on va en entendre parler longtemps. Donc, je vous dirais là, que là, tout de suite, c'est important de reconnaître tout le travail qu'il a fait, son service public, c'est sa famille qui adorait. J'étais à Winnipeg il y a à peine 10 jours, puis on a travaillé ensemble avec d'autres, évidemment, libéraux qui étaient là pour discuter des enjeux, puis on parlait beaucoup de l'Ouest canadien. Alors, on va se rappeler de lui.
In English, but just being in Winnipeg recently and
Yes, well, of course, first I want to send my condolences to his family, his friends, and all of our parliamentary family. We will miss him dearly. We didn't really want to believe that he was sick, of course, but he has been working all of his life as a in public service and made such a difference in this government. And 10 days ago, I was in Winnipeg with him. We were talking with other Liberals in Winnipeg at a meeting, and he was so convinced that the West could make such a difference in our country with prosperity, and so convinced. And I truly believe that's exactly what he did, convince us on how we can be a better and greater country. We will be missing him a lot.
Very sad to hear about Jim's passing. Fantastic parliamentarian, dedicated to his country and his community. Also just a tremendous friend and mentor. Thoughts go out to his family and all of our colleagues. It's nice to see the expressions of condolences come in, but our thoughts are with his family. Thanks very much. Merci beaucoup. En français, tous nos pensées est avec la famille de Jim Carr, d'un parlementarien extraordinaire qui était dévoué à son communauté, son pays au Canada, un grand ami de moi et plein de mes collègues et un mentor. On va se manquer. Merci beaucoup.
Well, I just learned it as I was walking in. I'm extremely sad, a man that devoted his life to his country, to his province, to his country, and he's going to be missed. I love the guy. Je viens juste de l'apprendre en rentrant ici. C'est un homme qui a dévoué sa vie, sa carrière à sa province au Canada. Un homme que tout le monde aimait. Et il va nous manquer beaucoup. Je l'aime. Je l'aimais, je l'aime. Merci.
Sadly, he was a colleague and a close friend of mine. As chair of the Prairies North Caucus, I've had a lot of time I've spent with him over the last year getting to know him, and he's been such a strong voice and for me personally, guiding me in my early days of being an MP, sharing his experiences, but really just being a good friend and somebody who I look up to, and I really will cherish my time that I've had the opportunity to spend with him.
thank you.
Thank you.
I think all of us are shocked, saddened, and heartbroken. I've known Jim since he was an MLA in Manitoba and president of Manitoba Business Council. Somebody that, despite our partisan differences, I've always considered a friend. He's a great champion for Manitoba, and I know that his family is very heartbroken right now. I'll offer my sympathy and condolences.
Good that, you know, this place, ultimately we're human beings, and it's Jim was a respected colleague across the way, and just sad to see another member pass, and we just wish his family, give them our best, and send our condolences.
Yeah, just passing on condolences to his family and friends. Really a sad situation, and it's always sad to see any colleague go. He was a great guy, very down to earth, and just a good person overall, so it's really sad. Yeah, thank you.
Écoute, ce que je peux dire, nonobstant les partis, évidemment, que comme parlementaire, à chaque fois qu'il arrive une maladie ou une mortalité dans la grande famille des députés fédéraux, ça nous fait toujours quelque chose, parce qu'on est tous, d'abord et avant tout, des collègues de travail. Donc, c'est sûr que ça nous fait de la peine. On savait qu'il était malade, mais d'apprendre son décès aujourd'hui, on est tous peinés de ça. Merci.
I had the honor of sitting beside Jim. He was a wonderful human being, and I used to say to him every day, "How are you feeling, Jim?" And he said, "Every day counts." And most of us would love to be able to go out the way he did, to the end, doing what he loved. It was an honor to be with him.
My sympathies go out to Jim Carr's family and loved ones. He was
wonderful to work with. He was a class act and certainly always encouraging my work, even though sometimes we disagreed politically. I had such admiration for him, and we'll miss him in Manitoba.
What was the admiration built of?
Well, I know in his final days, you know, he just really encouraged me to keep doing what I'm doing. And, you know, this is a partisan place, but we're all colleagues. And that means that we need to be respectful with each other. Certainly I had a deep respect for Jim Carr, but he was also very respectful of me. He understood, you know, where I stood on many issues, and he was always encouraging. And I appreciate him, and my love to his family and his staff. You know, I know, especially at this time, it's really difficult, so my sympathies.
Can you share a bit about what this just means for Manitoba as well, since he's been such a fixture in the political community for so long?
Well, I think it's a loss for Manitoba, and certainly since coming to the House of Commons, I really saw you know, Jim Carr as a bridge builder, as a good colleague, as somebody who showed a lot of compassion, particularly for issues that I've been fighting for in Manitoba. And he was just so encouraging, and yeah, so it's a loss.
Then, you know, in 2016, I became the National Director for the Métis Settlements General Council. And Métis communities in Winnipeg and across the prairies looked to Jim as one of the, you know, stalwarts for Métis rights at a time when Métis communities were really underrepresented. And as the National Director for the Métis at that time, and especially before this last election, before I became an MP, we really worked closely with him to try to advance Métis issues. You know, of course, we never agreed on a lot of things, but he was someone you can always go to, someone you can always talk with, and someone who would always give you his best word. And I really will miss Jim for that. And he sits beside me in Parliament today, and he was one of the first to welcome me in this place. And I know that his family, just want to say thanks to them, to all of his family for sharing him with us, and thanks for sharing him with all Canadians. Thanks for asking.
And just quickly too, just touch on it. Just what does this mean for Winnipeg broadly, with Jim Carr being such a strong representative for Winnipeg for years and years now to no longer have that voice in Ottawa?
Oh, well, I think it's a huge loss for sure, not just to Winnipeg, but to folks right across the country, from coast to coast to coast. He really represented decency in this place. He represented what hard work looked like, but he was also someone who really represented his community at the grassroots level. He was someone who wasn't an Ottawa MP like some of them know who get stuck in the bubble. He was someone who we knew was from Winnipeg, and someone we knew was from the prairies. And when he was appointed in 2019 as the special advisor for the prairies, folks across the prairies, Saskatchewan and Alberta, looked to him for his leadership, including me. So thanks so much.
Thanks.
Jim was a mentor to me long before I got here. He had a certain respectful approach that this place needs more of. And to know that, you know, right to the end, he put everything into the betterment of this country. And it's a real loss.
A mentor to you how before you got here?
When he was at NRCan, I was in the nonprofit community working towards action on climate. And you know, he seemed to be above some of the politics and more focused on respectfully making progress on that which Canadians care about. And yeah, it's a real loss.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.